System going. All right, so we're going to be talking about togetherness, and the reason why it's incredibly important is because we're in an incredibly divided society, and I want us to value togetherness, which is basically we don't know how to value it because they're subtle things about togetherness that I want to talk about. So, okay, first of all, why do we need togetherness? I would say in short, togetherness is happiness, and I'll break that down into three elements of why I think that's true. First of all, our buying addiction has made us lose track of what's important. So let me explain that quickly. So, because we've been so obsessed with just buying stuff as if that's going to solve our problems, we haven't been thinking about the more subtle things that actually make us happy, because we've been overwhelmed by our addiction. The second thing is, when we buy lots of stuff, we can see that's not going to make us happy if we're going to be alone with that stuff. Typical example is video streaming that you might have. You might be able to watch endless videos by yourself, but you're not going to be happy alone because we're social beings. So don't try to bypass connection with people with materialistic things. This is what we're suffering from now. In London, we suffer from a loneliness epidemic because we're doing exactly that. We've got lots of stuff, but we're alone with that stuff. And finally, my argument for togetherness is happiness is that if you look to your best memories, you'll realize they're really small and subtle things that don't cost money. Yesterday, I had a fantastic conversation with my neighbour. We were just enjoying the weather outside in his front garden. We were just talking about Ghana and whatever, and our dreams and what we like to do. And it was a great conversation. I said to him, we don't need money to do this kind of stuff. So anyway, that's why togetherness is happiness. This is just the beginning of it. I'm going to talk about more in-depth methods by which we can achieve togetherness and happiness, but I wanted to give an introduction as to how that's useful, or why togetherness is happiness. What do you feel about that?
Well, we live in an Abrahamic. Thank you. We live in an Abrahamic system, which is a pure capitalist-based economy and free market trade, and that brainwashes people just to buy stuff, and because you have people to buy cars and all that, so I'm like in a bigger house. This is driven by the Abrahamic religions as a punishment to people that don't wish to be part of the religion that you grew up in. If you don't want to be that religion you grew up in, then you'll be heavily punished. And that comes down to not being expelled from the community at best, that is, of course. At worst, you get abused and killed, which is a common theme in the Abrahamic religions over the last 2,500 years. So this idea that happiness can be found from your leadership in the Abrahamic religions is completely delusional. There is absolutely proof of reality to this, which is the last 2,500 years have been one of poverty, rape, repression, and if you're not rich and a leader of an Abrahamic religion, then you don't exist as in the written sense, musical sense, poetry sense, and other wonderful things that every human being, man, woman, gay, straight, any category you're in, to be part of. This is denied you, therefore those people can never be happy or display happiness. And Khalid said, you don't need money to be happy? I mean, that's a complete and utter lie. That is a complete and utter lie. Because I'm pretty sure he's used the National Health Service, which wasn't free, and needs money and needs funding. And the social services, he's used that. So it's another huge lie based on, and he's also used roads and that garden and the air quality, that we need governments to confirm that air must be we have laws and a political system to try and make sure our air is clean so that our children don't die of lung things. Because you can't be happy if you're dying of disease. You can't be happy if you're not allowed to create, learn about yourself, become yourself. And further and foremost, to have a choice if to be religious or not religious. And you are denied that in capitalism. You're denied that. I mean, capitalism is the absolute creation from the Abrahamic religions. Guess what? When you look at your religious leaders, they were running around in very expensive cars, having very expensive plastic surgery. So it's complete perversion, and yet people never question this. How is it that I'm giving money to charity, and yet it's always the rich kids getting richer in your religions? And my God, they're buying themselves lovely, massive palaces, lovely golden chairs, and yet they're the sheep. They call them the sheep. I'm not sure what in Muslim communities the rich think of what they would call as the scum. Think of him and many other people. The majority of Muslims in Christianity, they think called the scum the sheep, and the sheep are there for culling, and the sheep are there to be guided into whatever horrific direction that transpires. There is no happiness being a sheep. There is happiness. Happiness stems fundamental from laws, National Health Service, and the ability to be able to transpire you as a human being into music, into creating, into learning what you are as a human being, and not being persecuted or repressed by the Abrahamic religions.
Cool. So if I'm trying to summarize what you said, there are things like, do we need money to be happiness? And I was saying, yeah, you need some tiny amount of money, very tiny amount of money to subsist, to exist, relatively to our over obsession with money. So I'm not saying that, and money can be really useful. I'm not anti-money, just saying spend it on other people, spend it together, and yeah, just a little coffee for somebody else. That's kind of stuff that's enough to make people happy. Or even just talking, as I was giving an example. And then you were talking about Abrahamic religions.
Yes, I was.
Kind of didn't seem very particularly relevant to the idea of what I was saying, buying addiction. Abrahamic religions talk about spiritual things, focusing on spiritual things. So, but I think what you might be concerned about is that, how do Abrahamic religions collect so much money to do so many things? So I'm in the Ahmadi Muslim community. We build lots of mosques, which are essentially community centers. We do lots of community work for everybody, not just Muslims. And how do we do that despite not having much money? It's just that when you're together, you can do so much. We did lots of coronation street parties, whereas loads of other people in our area couldn't do it. The local elected leader of our streets couldn't put anything together, but we did it really. We put so many together so easily because of our unity, our togetherness as Muslims. We're like a living, breathing community that's always doing something. So that's the response to that. Now, I could hear a lot of divisive talk about blaming. This is the next thing I want to talk about, the disunity. I want to say, in short, disunity is hell. We're creating it. We can see depression levels going up all the time. Okay, how does that happen? So one point is that division creates strangers of everybody. We start blaming everybody. This is your fault, whatever. Then we make enemies of everybody. We make strangers of everybody, and then the result is we're lonely despite being surrounded by people.
I get 1 minute 17.
Cool, thank you. Okay. And the other thing is, when we fall for this divisive talk, it's the elite who are taking advantage. They are dividing us, ruling us by purpose. They're throwing out lots of junk out into society. Oh, this person's against that person. We shouldn't fall for it. I don't really. I'll say, there are issues, definitely. Atheism is not good for us, right? But
you blaming atheists?
I would say atheism is statistically a big problem, right? Okay, and remember, it's my turn to talk.
Picking up a
So,
Contradiction.
yes, I'm in the middle of explaining it. That's why. So, as I was saying, although despite Dust says he's agnostic, atheist, whatever, however I describe him. We still talk. We try to understand each other. Try to invite. Hopefully invite each other to. We do invite each other to different events and things. I try to work out more on what we can do as a positive force rather than just blaming each other. Blaming gets us nowhere. It's exactly what the elites want from us. Okay. And as I was saying, disunity trains us to blame, not solve. So that's why a lot of these protests get nowhere. People protest and then they feel really bad about it because it just achieves nothing most of the time. If you have a one-day protest, that's not community building. Community building takes months, years. It takes building relationships, building understanding. Very easy to insult somebody, but to understand somebody and work with somebody, that's a completely different thing. So, yeah.
Very good, thank you. So I got 1 minute 17 after that.
Yeah.
So, community centres don't exclude people based on them being women or gay, and I'm pretty sure that in Muslim countries that you're excluded from going to your place of worship if you're a woman. And it's the same with all Abrahamic religions, of course. They don't let certain groups of people into church, your equivalent of the church. And it's the same with Christianity. They exclude women that have something to say, literally, in the Abrahamic religions. So I'm trying to keep this to Abrahamic religions because basically they're all the same. They just, for some reason, love to hate each other, which is division, and yet the absolute historical reality, the last 2,500 years of the Abrahamic religions, which is just blaming each other and murdering each other. But when I say they're murdering each other, really what they're doing is just murdering the working class, while the rich kids get to profit selling weapons of this. That's Abrahamic religions. That's what they do. They blame each other for not being the right God. Just go to Speaker's Corner, listen to the absolute, what's the word, shizer that the different religions get on with each other there, and who's claiming whose God's got the biggest cock is the absolute only conversation that ever happens at Speaker's Corner. Almost, not quite literally. Sadly, that doesn't actually get out of not doing the blaming. He's right in that. Don't blame. But actually try to address things, which is that community centres isn't just for one religion or to be built by one religion, and mustn't exclude religious centres, church, synagogues, and whatever you call your religious centre should never exclude someone being a woman, which is exactly what they do. And that is a misery and hatred. So blaming, don't blame it. That's insane to blame. I've never blamed Khalid, but Khalid has no responsibility, little understanding of the little experience of the world, which is what his religious leaders designed for him. His religion designed him to have very little experience of the world, and therefore when he's exposed to this world, his only reaction is to be overwhelmed by it. And when an individual is overwhelmed, they have two ways of going. And one way is what most people go, which is just want to destroy it. Destroy what you do not understand, do not appreciate, and think, well, if it's not me, then I can get rid of it. And I think I've got 1 minute, I got 1 minute 17 seconds. So protest is only done because you have what I've described just recently in the last 10 minutes, less than, which is you're living in poverty and horror. Of course you're going to protest. You're not going to sit there and berate. That's exactly what's happened in the last 2,500 years of Abrahamic rule, which is to punish the weakest in society. That's their goal, aim, and transpire. But not by this. He'll carry out that act, but he has no choice over that, no agency, no understanding, because he was designed with one goal and one goal alone. The Abrahamic religion's leadership designed him to make sure that division is the only reality that he can ever experience. And he, as in Abrahamic religion, that is he. And that's terrible to see and watch and see at Speaker's Corner week after week, year after year, and grossly obsess people's minds, which we should be talking about human rights, we should be talking about global warming, and we should be talking about human rights as being bigger and more powerful than any religion. If you're going to agree that human rights is important, then they have to be bigger than any religion and put religious leaders in prison if they were to break the minimum of human rights. And never, oh God, he wrote, I can't read what I've written. So, yes, I'll pause on there.
No, thank you for some good points there. So I do feel in Speaker's Corner, religious people mainly talk about ideological things, about which God is correct and things like that. And that's why, I'm a rare person who uses religion to explain the social problems that religion solves. And so the next bit of what I want to talk about is how only religious people uniquely solve all religious problems. Societal problems. Okay? And we can see this. So, for example, I'll take not just Muslims. And there was a lot of incorrect things I should quickly, I think a lot of... I'm glad Dust says a lot of the things he says, even though hopefully most people can realise they don't... not based on any facts, but things like saying that women are not allowed to go to mosques and things. You do hear that on, mainstream media, I think, who want to divide us. That's just incorrect. Wait, remember? Take turns.
No, I'm allowed to make statements.
Take turns.
I'm allowed to do that.
Okay, no one.
Obsessed with it.
Okay. So anyway, as I was saying, so a lot of a whole tirade of incorrect statements. It's not really worth correcting. But, one or two good statements there. That Muslims and religious people should be talking about more practical things. And so now I want to explain how Abrahamic religions generally are the only, or religions generally, Abrahamic religions being the foremost in this, in creating unity. I'll take, for example, in England, as church congregations have gone down, people have become more depressed. And there's a very obvious reason for that. It's because people are not getting together anymore. So, as religion is dying out, atheism is not solving the problems. It's not creating any solutions. And so people are just getting more and more depressed. So, I'll just give you a few examples. So, in short, what I'm trying to say is that God is the rope to feeling alive. So what does that mean? It's like, it's God that gives religion, which is a sort of rope that's hung down for us to latch onto, and without that, society degenerates. We're not able to access the better part of society, the togetherness, the happiness, the spiritual side of things. Do you want to... Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So, without God, there's no unity. You can see that society is becoming more and more individualistic, and very quickly you can see, what does religion do? All the Abrahamic religions, they have one day in which people get together, they stop doing materialistic things, they focus on something spiritual, and spiritual just means being nice to each other, focusing on being good to each other rather than just buying more and more stuff alone by ourselves. All of the Abrahamic religions, but it's only Islam that really focuses on this, and Orthodox Jews that focus on this, and Christians have forgotten this largely, which is they're expected to acknowledge each other when walking past each other. There's a beautiful thing in Islam, is that you go past anybody, you have to say, peace be upon you, assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. This is, Jesus would have done that. Jews say assalamu alaikum. It's just recognizing each other rather than walking around like zombies, as we do in the West. and all these little things make a huge difference. We feel irrelevant when just people, one person after the other in the community, just walks past you and even avoids making eye contact and stuff like that. Okay, and then also on the other side, so I've talked about positive things that religion teaches us, which is unique. Okay, but you don't hear atheists saying things which is in Islam especially says avoid insulting each other, like comparing like you're just better than the others, right? Don't just insult without any sort of purpose or good reason. Stop being suspicious of each other, of people's intentions. Okay, so even if it's true, try not to say it. This is like standard office talk, where we always people, as soon as somebody leaves the room, that's what I found, people just start saying bad things about that person. As all of these things create disunity, hate for each other, distrust, and stuff like that. So and then why is it only religion that manages statistically? If you look at religion, I was just talking about, is the only thing that's binding societies together. Only force, psychologists have realized, only force that creates stable families. Families are breaking down except for orthodox religious families. There's only religious people are still having children, which is an offshoot of stable families, right? Why is it that? Because without God, godlessness leads to nihilism, which is the idea that nothing matters. And when nothing matters, all you care about is yourself. Individualism on the rise. And individualism, when you don't care about anybody else, is effectively division. Okay? And then any distance from God's teaching leads to depression. So that's a really interesting thing to realize. That as we go away from any religious teaching, I'll give you even economic teachings, like, for example, borrowing money on interest. All the major Abrahamic religions, at least, they are against interest, even though Christianity has largely forgotten their roots and their teachings. That has led to what we've got we have now, which is inflation. So many other problems. Robbing, I've talked about that before. Do check out my videos about how interest destroys economies. And then, of course, as we're finding with godlessness, we're so confused because we can't tell the difference between a man or a woman. We can't even logically prove that even pedophilia is bad, because, an atheist would typically say, you can do anything you want, okay? And then they'll say, love is love. And then I'll say, well, is love for an underage person, what's wrong with that? They can't argue against that. So my point... Can I just finish my...
that was just a gross statement. I'm not going to let you get away with that.
Yeah, I've had these discussions many times, so you can't... An atheist cannot disagree with pedophilia because they have subjective morality.
Such bullshit.
Yeah, okay. And so in short, the reason only God can solve all these problems, and you can see this practically, is because first of all, it's only got it only demonstrates that atheism is not replacing any of the things that have been lost when religion is being ignored, and then the lack of God leads to nihilism and depression and no sense of togetherness and no ideas. Anyway, carry on.
We've had less time. It's good. I think you've had. So I'm owed an extra. Yeah, anyway. So wow, I mean, the paedophile is such a delusion. Remember, it's the religious leaders that will happily rape children constantly because they know they're above the law, which has been proof of the last 2,500 years of when there's no authority to transpend the local gang leader, aka your religious leader. That gang leader can commit any crime and abuse he wishes upon that society, because there is no human rights laws to step in and to put that religious leader in jail when he rapes children. And it's been an ongoing horror, which is religious leaders have indulged in for as long and as much as they possibly can. This idea that atheism means nothing, is nihilism, is just unbelievable. I mean, have you ever used the National Health Service?
I avoid it as much as possible. It's broken down as terrible.
That wasn't the question, Khalid. Answer
Yes.
the question. So he's happily used a system that saved his life, probably saved his family members, and yet he's here now abusing and shitting on a system which has actually helped, which he's engaged in, which is done by Christians actually. You know, they were actually Christians that created the National Health Service, but they used the idea that we should be using, instead of religions just letting the poor die en masse when they become ill, but they will actually give a free government-controlled system to make sure that you and your family are safe. And now to hear you abuse it and mock it and deride it is absolutely typical amongst religious people and people I meet at Speaker's Corner, the far right, that you're only alive because the socialists created a National Health Service. You're only here because the socialists in the 46, 47 created a National Health Service that you used. If you had any conviction, any decency, any self-respect, any self-belief, anything that represented a true core value, you would have never used the National Health Service and you would have just watched your family members die. But you don't. You didn't. Instead, you used socialist service, free at the point, free at every single aspect, and non-privatised, because that is what is humane. There's no Abrahamic system that created a free health service. In Abrahamic systems, you have to choose the private system or the very worst system that's left, which is now what the National Health Service has become. It's absolutely abysmal that you sit there and say those words when it was socialists that created the National Health Service, and it was free for everybody and every religious member and every woman, man, child, however how you identify, to access it without question. That is what socialists did, and you've engaged in it constantly, thus proving each time you do that, what a hypocrite that you truly are when it comes to this. I mean, it's embarrassing, Khalid, that is. But as I said, there's loads of people at Speaker's Corner who abuse atheists and socialists and other members, but still yet very happy to engage constantly in the very creations that the socialists have manifested into reality. And this delusion, this profound, gross misrepresentation of political systems and countries that atheists are in charge, I mean, that's clearly a delusion. Look at every leader. They're always like Donald Trump, like Tate, like Tony Blair. All these leaders, all these people in society make real decisions. They're all religious, all of them. What atheists are making what decisions when? Absolutely diabolical nonsense that's being uttered by the Abrahamic religions that somehow the atheists to blame. They've never been in charge. And the brief moment they were in charge made sure that you're alive today, which you now mock and abuse, which I find appalling. But you're entitled to abuse the very people that keep you and your family alive. You're entitled to do that. And go on TV, go onto YouTube. I got an extra 1 minute 40, by the way. Entitled to abuse these people that kept you and your family alive, because we'll still look after you. Even though you abuse us, deride us, crap on us, and constantly spend every moment of every single day trying to annihilate.
Oh, my turn?
No,
Okay.
it's not your turn.
Oh, I see.
Remember.
Oh, I see. See what you're doing. Okay, yeah. Go.
To annihilate, and your idea of nihilism is something maybe a mirror would help with. I think that would be a very important factor, especially with the National Health Service. So, depression. Depression comes from when you're living at war. I mean, Abrahamic religions have constantly... Oops, yeah, I see what you mean. That should be me.
Oh, I thought you were trying to.
We'll take off.
I owed 2 minutes or something, so I thought that's what you were doing.
Yeah, I just got that wrong. I was engaged in a conversation.
Okay.
I just knocked off 30 seconds off my time. So depression comes from the world that Abrahamic religion has made capitalism being the very thing they ram down your throats. And if you don't engage in that, then you're seen as a mental case. If you wish to engage in being creative, learning about yourself, having been able to fulfill your dreams, being man or woman or gay or whatever you identify as, that's entirely what you do, as long as it's not harming other adults and it is consensual. This is absolutely essential and all based in law with the human constitution that can override the Abrahamic religions when they constantly pursue their ideology of rape, depression, and war, which is a constant in the last 2,500 years. And when people stand up to try and create the National Health Service, then this is what you get, even though they use it themselves. Remarkable.
Thank you. So I didn't mention the NHS. It's really interesting. So, no, like you spent quite a long time.
Atheist, socialist.
Anyway, so you spent a long time telling me how bad I am about using the NHS.
Time I required.
No, it's not about the time. I'm just surprised that you even mentioned the NHS so much when I didn't mention the NHS. The point is, so I think he's trying to say that, well, there's a weird contradiction. He said that Abrahamic religions have got nothing to do with helping each other, but Christianity created the NHS, so it's really weird. I don't really understand that.
But it's not weird.
But generally you'll find, as societies are religious, they're more helping each other. And as I demonstrated that, people are more together because they're brought up on different set of values, which are know your neighbour. People were a lot more neighbourly when they were more religious. When my dad came to this country, people were a lot more neighbourly and friendly and social and things like that. That's when, the NHS came into existence, or around that time at least. And then you can claim to be religious and just basically be selfish and capitalistic. That's true. Okay. I think what I'm happy about from what he's Dust has been saying is the endless blaming. When I say happy, it just demonstrates that's how we're not going forwards. We need to talk about what we can do. What are the solutions? What should we all do? I worry about the sort of woke sort of idea of we're all victims of something, and maybe in the future, if everything was different, then the world would be better. We need to blame ourselves if we're going to blame anybody, and say, what can we do to work on ourselves to improve everybody? And religious people, by the way, they're very, at least as an Ahmadi Muslim, we're very inclusive. I talked about how we do so many community events to get everybody together free of charge. We save up all the money to help other people all the time, and otherwise, in our streets at least, no community events happen. I'm the one who gives presents to people in Christmas and Hanukkah and Eid. So many other people, nobody else does it, except for one Jewish guy who gives me an Eid present back, right?
I gave you a plan.
I'm talking about in my street, yeah. But yeah, it's true. People are nice to each other at some basic level. It's not that people don't smile at each other. I mean, that's the point. But it's not enough to build a community and not enough to make a difference. That's why Muslim communities are so much stronger than all the other communities, because they actually are working together. I say Muslim communities, especially Ahmadi Muslim communities, we're the only internationally united community. And then I mentioned I think we need to clarify the thing about atheism leads to nihilism. Why? Because if you're an atheist, then you think everything is random. If everything is random, there's no point to anything. That's what nihilism means. If there's no point to anything, you're inevitably going to be selfish. That's the reality of what we see in society as happening now. And of course that's going to lead to depression because we're social beings and we're not being connected to each other. And then I talked about how atheism leads to pedophilia, because atheists basically say love is love. You can love anybody. That's why you can have
atheists say that?
I'm making an argument. I'm explaining that now.
What atheists say?
All atheists. All atheists.
Have I said that to you?
Yeah, you're in effect.
That's bullshit.
Yeah, can I explain that now?
No, you're not going to explain that. You're going to tell me who said that. I've never said that. Show me, demonstrate another atheist that said that.
Yeah.
Demonstrate that. Don't bullshit about that.
Okay, so I'm going to explain how
explain who said that. Which atheists? Name them.
Okay.
Name these atheists.
So what we're doing, we're slipping down.
Name the atheists. Name the atheists.
No atheist.
No atheist would say that.
Now let me explain.
Bullshit.
Okay. Can I talk now?
No, you're going to name these atheists. So you're saying.
I already said there's no. I'm not going to name.
Yeah, because it's bullshit.
Yeah. So.
You run out of time.
Yeah. So. What's happening in society is we're going down a slippery slope of you can be anything you want, and you can be a man or a woman, you can be a cat, whatever you want, right? And so when you detach yourself from reality, which is what atheists have done, and they say things like love is love, that's why you can have homosexual love, and you know, as a Muslim, say, sure, you can be a homosexual if you want, but it's going to be bad for you. We can demonstrate that. You know, even the NHS will tell you it's bad for you. That's why when you give blood, they'll say, "Are you a homosexual?" Because maybe then you can't give blood, right? If you have sex with prostitutes, you can't give blood, right? So when you say love is love and there's no boundaries, then why can you not be a paedophile? No atheist can explain that. They can only say, oh, it feels bad, it's wrong, it feels wrong to do that. But if you don't have any rules as to why, and it could be a consenting child, for example, right? You don't know what's going on. So
your level of bullshit is fucking massive.
So this is the reality of how society is slippery, going down a slippery slope of anything is possible, anything is acceptable, and society is degenerating. So anyway,
name these atheists that said having sex with children.
So he keeps repeating the same thing, even though I've answered the question.
You just make disgusting accusations.
Yeah.
Name these atheists. Name the atheist, Khaled.
Why? I've already answered. I've already answered the question. So anyway,
that's fucking embarrassing. That is what you've just done there. Absolutely blaming a group of people and saying that all that because you've just declared it. But you haven't named a name. There's some atheists that said having sex with children is fine. Name a name. Name a name, Khaled.
Anyway, so.
Name a name. Don't sit there looking gobsmacked.
I'm not gobsmacked. I'm bored of you repeating the same thing.
Name a name of the paedophiles that you've said here. Name a name. Name a name.
I haven't. There is no name. There's no name. This inevitable conclusion. It's the inevitable conclusion of having no religion that you.
Name
all sorts of crazy things are happening in society because of it. So I'm really going to finish off because Dust has no argument left. So he's just saying anything random things. Right?
Name a name, Khaled.
So anyway, what I'll do is Six's got really too upset and his whole worldview is falling apart. I will just post the beautiful Islamic verse of the Holy Quran, which summarizes all of what we're saying. Because he's getting too upset, I will post it in the comments, which summarizes everything we're saying, which is basically without God. Without the rope of Allah, as God says, there's no hope. There's no hope that unites us. Nothing that brings us back from degeneration, godless degeneration. It's a beautiful metaphor that I'll post in the comments, which is God describes hold fast together by the rope of Allah. It's like, I don't know what the phrase is, but like a rope up or a leg up. a way to get to more heavenly
For your customers, if you don't have any self-respect for
values.
yourself,
Yeah.
at least have respect for your customers.
Um,
A name said
and this verse is beautiful in that it talks about like how we're on the brink of fire. Without religion, we're on the brink of fire. We can see we're creating hell for ourselves all the time.
name.
And so I do read the. Actually, have you finished yet? Okay. So and hold fast all together by the rope of Allah, and be not divided, and remember the favor of Allah when He bestowed on you when you were enemies, and He united your hearts in love. So only religion unites people. I never get this angry. Like just saying same stuff.
You don't care about naming names about.
I already said
you don't care, do you? You don't care.
there's lots of paedophiles who are atheists. Just come and by the way, since he keeps going on about it, you're going to see paedophilia is going to go up and up, as it is, as relationships are falling apart and people are depending on pornography. And of course, when you depend on pornography, things go in more and more extreme situations. So hopefully you can hear me. We'll just be done in a second. So I already said I don't need to name names. There are no names. What people do in their spare time, it's up to them really. I hope they don't do it. Yeah. So like I'm a Muslim, so I'm in a long-term relationship, have regular sex, whereas the rest of society is becoming increasingly a secular society. But if they're a secular society, they're going to become more and more perverted because they're not fulfilling their needs. So
you care about it. Name and name. You can't do it. You don't
so
care about it.
do read the beautiful verse of the Quran that connects and unites people, and if you don't, you're going to be suffering from depression and atheism, which I'm sure Dust is suffering from, because he doesn't have any of the benefits.
I would tell him name and sit there.
Yeah, I don't know names. I don't know how many atheists are paedophiles. Okay.
It's absolute bollocks, isn't it?
And I would say also there's the Christians and the Buddhist monks who are atheists. I mean, the Christian priests and Buddhist monks who are paedophiles because they are going away from God's teachings. Because Jesus was a Orthodox Jew, and he would have been married. He would not have been celibate. So anyway, thank you for your time, and I think we'll finish the video there.
Embarrassment.